Man, I'd be so much more excited about this card if we still had Evloev versus Mitchell as the main event. Which isn't to say that I'm not excited to see Rodriguez versus Lemos. But I'm not as excited to have that as a main event. Is that reasonable?
I think that's fair. Any time you kind of lose Bryce Mitchell, it's going to kind of be a big deal. Evloev would have been a great fucking fight.
And now they've added Magni and D-Rod. And that was not originally meant to be on this card. And it is
No,
one that you look down, there's some...
we already made picks on that one as well, didn't we? I can't remember which way I picked, but I'm pretty sure
I'm
before that
pretty
one
confident.
before it got moved, I'm pretty sure we made a pick on it.
I don't think we did. I think it got moved and we never officially set our picks. Like, I think maybe you wrote a pick for it, but
Probably,
then
yeah.
we discussed it being moved when it came down to the actual recording. Yeah, I mean, I'm not changing my mind on that one. And with all of that out the way, we might as well say hello and welcome back to the MMA Split podcast, the loosest MMA podcast on YouTube, which is also serving as our preview show this week. Apologies for the late release. Apologies for the lack of a breakdown on last week's Vegas card. Josh has been living in a vacuum. He is unaware of the results. He is unaware of the fights. And as a result, has very kindly asked that until he's watched them, we do not discuss anything that's happened. For all of you who are quite present on social media, you might wonder, how can a man in 2022 exist in a vacuum? I introduce this man now, for he is, as always, our producer, Josh.
It's been a fucking nightmare of a week. I've had a lot of personal shit I've had to deal with this week, so it's just one of those. I'm going to be catching up probably this evening on last week's fights. But yeah, there'll be no leaderboard this week, unfortunately. I'll put that back on next week.
I think the main talking point there is, man, is how impressive it is that in 2022 you can remove yourself from spoilers.
It's pretty easy when you've had a week as shit as mine, to be honest. I'm just going to kind of
Okay,
leave it
fair
at
enough.
that.
Fair enough. Well, certainly some tips I hope I could take there. That would mean I don't have to watch House of the Dragon episodes at 4 o'clock in the morning on Mondays. With all of that out the way, though, we are going to be discussing the fights that are yet to happen at UFC Vegas. I want to say 64?
Yeah, 64 now.
64, headlined by Marina Rodriguez, whose name I occasionally say right and most of the time revert to saying it the way that I think, as a European, it should be said, taking on her fellow Brazilian compatriot, Amanda Lemos. Another big step up for Amanda Lemos. Obviously, she's already had the Jessica Andrade fight, maybe a step too soon. Andrade is obviously a very scary lady to fight at any weight class. Marina Rodriguez, though, is no joke. 5 rounds, there's going to be plenty of time for her to work. They both like to do most of their business standing up. So I think there's going to be that element. But I think the jiu-jitsu that Lemos showed against Michelle Waterson in her last fight is going to throw an extra spanner into this works. Some other good fights down the card as well. We got Magni versus D-Rod, which was rebooked to be the co-main event this weekend. Grant Dawson versus Mark Madsen. That is one that definitely stands out for me. Very curious to hear Josh's thoughts on that. And a couple of fun prelim fights as well. Before we get into the nitty gritty, as always, please do like the video if you're enjoying the content. Subscribe if you are not already subscribed, and feel free to leave comments even if you disagree with us. All commentary is welcome. With all that out the way, and a reminder again that we will be reverting back to our usual schedule of recording on Mondays and releasing Monday nights / Tuesday mornings. These last couple of weeks have just been an odd exception for a variety of different reasons, but into the main part of this. Josh, what are your thoughts about this main event?
Obviously, losing Evloev, Mitchell sucks. This, though, still a great fight. Anytime Mahina Rodriguez is fighting, I get excited. I've told you before, I don't like it when Irish fighters walk out to the Dropkick Murphys. They're from Boston. But when Mahina does it, I get a little fucking kick out of that. It's still a good song. That being said, yeah,
Particularly as the main event.
you
You need to let
definitely.
that song have the full time to play out.
Wait, yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think it's only like about 2 minutes long anyway. Um, quite often with that song, when it is the main event fighters, you hear the intro looping round again once you get to the end. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens on Saturday. But yeah, both ladies like to stay standing on the feet. I was surprised the reach is identical, but obviously Rodriguez has got about 4 inches of height on her. More importantly, though, she's very fluid on her feet. She's in and out a lot quicker. I feel like she fights longer, way more effectively than Lemos can. And because she hits clean, I'd say the power is almost sort of negligible. I'm
Yeah.
edging this one to Miguel Mahina. But that being said, I do kind of fully expect it to get at least into the championship rounds.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, you're absolutely right. I agree with you. I think even if the reach is the same, Marina fights long. That's how she likes to fight. She keeps distance very well. She likes to keep everybody and, land her punches right at the end of her reach. Very, very technical. I do feel like Amanda likes to be in the pocket a little bit more, but she does like to throw that high kick, and she sets up that high kick really well. There's not a lot of setup or a lot of giveaway on it. And I feel like that high kick, and if she can use her kicking game, which I think is a little bit better, particularly going high than Marina, she does have the ability to negate that. I mean, really, for me, the big difference between these two is Amanda's a finisher and Marina isn't. Obviously Marina's got the knockout win over Amanda Hebas, but that was just one of those. Hebas was young, rushing in. She got caught absolutely perfectly. Most of the
Twice.
other time twice, yeah, absolutely right. Most of the other Marina fights, we see her breaking down girls across the full 15 or 25 minutes. And that certainly seems to be where her skill is. And even if she doesn't always start brilliantly, she gets her reads, she figures timings out, she starts getting her rhythm. And once she finds that range, certainly rounds 2, 3, 4 onwards that we've seen, even in her losses, most of those losses, she's coming back in the third round and looking pretty. I mean, it's only one loss. She looked pretty damn good in the third round. I'm pretty sure she got a draw against Carla Esparza by winning the third round 10-8 after
Uh,
losing the first two. So
no, so Esparza was the loss, but she weirdly she has got two draws. She's got the Calvillo one, and I think it was
that's
Marcos where
right.
she came back strong in the end.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But in both of those, it didn't go well for her at the beginning. But once she found her mark, she was able to kind of adjust. And you're right, it is the Carla Esparza fight. But that third round, she was putting it on Carla. So it's a trend for her. It's easy to do something like MMA math and say, well, when Waterson fought Amanda Lemos, she lasted 6 minutes. And when Marina fought Waterson, it was a 25-minute fight. But in that same vein, the Waterson that Amanda Lemos fought was kind of the one that already had one foot out the door. The Waterson that fought Marina, I think, was a little bit more switched on. And it does kind of speak to the styles. And for me, the real thing is that Marina has fought the higher level, I think, so far. Apart from that, if you take that Andrade fight out of the mix, Amanda's only really got one high profile win. In fact, two high profile fights, and she's kind of 500 on them. Whereas you look at Marina, she's beaten Hebas, she's beaten Dern, she's beaten Yan. These are that's the very best of the best this weight class has to offer.
Yeah, and even the close fights, they're great fights. It's not like someone's having an off night. She is a legit contender. She's fucking exciting as all hell to watch. You're quite right about Lemos. She has kind of got the bigger names. It is just kind of Michelle, Angie Overkill Hill. I mean, there's some that I
The
could sort of
Overkill
say as a
fight was
stretch.
close.
Yeah,
That fight was close as well. Really, really close.
there are other names I could stretch to say that I think of as good wins, but yeah, certainly being in the spotlight hasn't always favoured Amanda. And,
Yeah.
frankly, I think that first M in MMA stands for mix, not math, and it's styles that make fights. I think you could almost say this
Yeah.
is a favourable one to some extent for both girls. But like I say, Amanda Lemos likes to fight in closer, and that's because she likes to have an entryway to kind of changing it up and sort of exploring new territory within the fight to try and make her opponent uncomfortable. Whereas Rodriguez has shown that she's got some good takedown defense. She can sprawl. She can get back to her feet. But more importantly, she can position herself to the point that rather than opening herself up to level changes, she can sort of bait her opponent into making level changes and land big clean hits.
Well, here's the other factor as well. The one submission I've seen from Lemos in the UFC, it was, correct me if I'm wrong, I believe it was a guillotine. And it was Michelle trying to get the takedown and she kind of wrapped her up. I don't see her successfully taking down Marina. And if she does, I don't really see her being able to maintain the top control for very long. I mean, Rodriguez has spent multiple rounds on her back against, 2 rounds on her back against Mackenzie Dern because it didn't get tapped. A full round on her back against Amanda Hebas didn't get tapped. Had Carla Esparza on top of her for 2 rounds, didn't get TKO'd or submitted. So even if she gets taken down, she's very good at surviving those positions. It's really, for me, those first 2 rounds, because Lemos, I think, is more explosive. I think certainly for the first third of the fight, she might even seem a little bit faster, and it might take Marina a bit of time to adjust to the speed. But I just feel if we see a round 3, this fight's only going one way, and my pick would be Marina.
Samesies, Mahina Rodriguez all day.
Now, we come down to a co-main event that when I first looked at it, I thought would be pretty easy to pick. And the more I've thought about it, the harder this is, because Magny versus Daniel Rodriguez, I've got to hand it to the UFC, is really good matchmaking.
Yeah, I think so. In fact, to be honest, I can't remember who I picked when I originally made the pick on this fight. I know who I'm picking today. I don't know if I'm being consistent, though. It's a bit of a toss-up.
The only two losses on D-Rod's career are razor close fights, a split decision and a unanimous decision. The split decision, I'm not saying it was a robbery or anything. A lot of people do think that the right guy won, but it was certainly a fight that he could have got the nod in. Never finished, never really looked hurt. The factor with this, though, is that's not necessarily what Neil Magny needs to do to guys to win fights. He's the master at figuring you out and putting pressure on you and doing what he needs to do and finding the position that he can win the fight in. Now, it didn't go very well for him against Shavkat, but Shavkat's a different animal. And I just feel with D-Rod, we're going to see how good is your clinch game? How good is your takedown defense? How can you deal with somebody where it's not just going to be a brawl?
Yeah, Neil Magny uses his frame well. He forces you to kind of survive in awkward situations, chewing up the clock. Very wily veteran. He's adapted well to the new rule set. He understands how to win rounds properly. He doesn't get too bogged down with position changes and takedowns. Like I say, Shavkat Rakhmonov, he's someone we've kind of earmarked for greatness sooner rather than later. Other than that, it's just kind of the occasional loss to reasonably big name fighters. Magny, the Haitian sensation, such a beast. I'm sure I picked D-Rod first time I picked this. Just thinking that sort of direct 1-2 approach across 3 rounds is probably going to be enough to get him decision. I'm changing up though. I'm going to go Magny today. Call it a win.
Interesting. I'm going Magny as well. It's really hard to do, and I could see. I mean, the path for D-Rod to win this is obvious, but I haven't seen somebody really try. I mean, the only person I'd say really looks like he was trying to take D-Rod down that I can think of off the top of my head was Kevin Lee. And Kevin Lee just looks like he was a lost puppy at welterweight.
Yeah, a little
bit.
It's
a completely different frame. And the way that Magny kind of controls people, it's different. He's not shooting in for double legs. He's keeping things at range, and then the other guy closes in, and then he gets the clinch, and then suddenly you're against the cage, and he's doing work against you against the cage. It's not an easy thing to deal with, and it's quite elusive in many ways.
Yeah, as soon as you try fighting for that underhook, he's repositioning his knee in between. He's constantly making you think. It's just, it's a real stressful nightmare being up against the cage with Neil Magny, I imagine. The way you see the other fighters' face change.
It's the big fights he loses, it's the high pressure step up fights where he tends to not show up. He usually in his career he beats a guy like D-Rod. I'm going Magny.
Yep, going Magny as well. I think we're I don't know how much separation we're going to get on this week's card.
I think we might get a little bit, but we'll go down and we'll see. We're not going to talk about this fight at all because
that's fair enough.
UFC's got to stop putting these shit heavyweights as the feature fight. It's not reasonable. We're going to talk about like 2 or 3 fights that are on the prelims that should be in that spot ahead of these guys. But Chase Sherman versus Parisian, my pick is Parisian.
Yeah. I almost tossed a coin for this one, but then I just sort of remembered that it just doesn't really make any sense to pick Chase. I've gone Parisian as well, kind of like I'm in namesakes, but let's pretend this one's Jay Parisian. I don't think he deserves the full Josh.
Agreed there. Down to flyweight, Tagir Ulanbekov takes on Nate Maness. And man, both of these guys have had some good performances already in the UFC. Nate Maness had that whole I'm the comeback guy thing going on for a while. It's certainly been exciting. I think lost his last fight, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, to Umar. So he's had a taste of things, but he's down at flyweight now.
Yeah, he's
and
big boy for flyweight. 5'10". Jeez Louise.
He knocked out gravely at bantamweight.
Yeah,
Maness,
well,
man.
Gravelly's got that kind of power though. If you catch him right, he knocks himself out.
True. Yeah, I'm going Maness, man. The only question I've got is first flight, moving down in the weight class. You know, that can go either direction. And Ulanbekov's not necessarily the guy that you'd want to fight as your first fight in the new weight class, but then again, it's not like there's any easy flyweights these days.
This is true. I'm glad you've gone Maness then. Ulanbekov, for me, I just think... I don't know how Maness makes 125, but I think it's going to be a problem. And I think being long, drawn out, slow, thin and tired, round 1 against the UFC caliber like flyweight, never mind that it's Ulanbekov.
Okay, can I have my pick be conditional?
As always, you've got up until fight night to change it.
Well, just for the sake of the podcast, I'd like to clarify so people don't just think I'm doing silly buggers if it changes without fair warning. If Maness rocks up and he's missed weight by like 2 or more pounds and looks like a zombie on the scales, I'm going to change my pick.
That's fair enough.
But
I've gotten into trouble doing that before, but
I rate Maness. I think he's a good fighter, and I think if he can make flyweight and be as effective, I think he's got a lot of potential to really dominate. Could be a really interesting name.
Oh yeah, he's a good bantamweight for sure. Let's see.
See if he could be a great flyweight.
5'10", 125.
Opening fight.
Ooh.
Opening fight of the main card, I would argue, maybe the most interesting fight for me. Certainly on the main card. Because Grant Dawson, coached by James Krause, there's guys who are coached by James Krause, and then there are guys that are coached by James Krause. This guy is like one of his real central proteges. He looks awesome at featherweight. He's looked really good at lightweight. He had that draw against, the person's name escapes me. You might be able to remind me.
The Spartan Ricky Glenn.
That's the one. And that is probably the closest that we've seen him really being kind of stretched out. I mean, he looked a little tired in that one in the 3rd round. He was kind of hanging on for dear life. There was that whole thing where he was in the submission and, you know, they were saying you got to get up by yourself. Otherwise, the submission still counts after the bell. Aside from that, he's been... Sorry, bangs my mic there. Aside from that, he's been pretty damn good. He's taken on Mark Madsen, who, in terms of wrestling credentials, you know, Greco-Roman, Olympian, 38 years old though. And for an Olympian, I haven't been blown away by how he's been able to utilize his wrestling so far in MMA. It doesn't seem as dominant and natural as it should, and he doesn't seem brilliant in the stand-up game. It certainly looks like it's a big weakness. Don't know how much time he's got. He's undefeated so far. I feel like Grant Dawson's that guy that's going to really poke holes in your game there.
Yeah, didn't he even fly out with retirement at one point due to family issues, personal issues, something like that? But yeah, he's been looking older and older as he goes. I mean, it's hard to complain when a fighter's undefeated in the UFC, but he does look every day of that 38 years old. It's not like he's young in terms of MMA because he put so many miles on wrestling. And just quickly, going back to KGD, is he still at Glory MMA? Because he changed over to ATT
He
for the
did,
last
didn't he?
fight.
Fucking hell. I
I'm not sure.
completely forgot about that.
'Cause
I
I don't think
completely forgot about that.
there's a problem with the relationship per se. I remember him saying some nice things about Kraus after he left, but I'm not sure who he's got in his corner this week. That's something definitely to keep an eye on.
No, you're
Or
right.
something
He
that,
is at ATT. So all that stuff about him being James Krause's Trojan
well,
was
he
true,
is
but
he is
ignore
still
all of that
a James Krause
because
fighter. He's still very much, he took in a lot of lessons there. He was the guy coming up at Glory MMA, certainly in kind of featherweight, lightweight kind of bracket. I like him in this fight. He's shown before against dangerous grapplers. Very different style, but against Leonardo Santos, he showed that he can adapt in a fight. I don't know. If all he has to really do is stuff a few takedowns, like get a good sprawl going, not get held up against the fence, and let that first round blow by without kind of letting Madsen build any momentum, without letting Madsen grow into the fight and get confident. I think if you can slow him down in that first round, you might even be able to get a finish there. Because KGD is a dangerous guy. Madsen, he's starting to look a little bit like a worn old man. He's very cynical. Fuck it, I've had a dark week. I'm getting dark with the picks, Matt.
I don't
Madsen
think
will be
he'd
dead
cynical,
soon.
man. I don't think he'd be cynical. Well, I mean, that's a little cynical, but I don't. It's always going to be tricky when you come into the sport late, and I can understand that there's going to be holes in the game. I'm not saying it to be mean. Like I think what he's done so far is really impressive, but like you say, there's undefeated and there's undefeated. There's an undefeated record where you're like, holy shit, this guy looks like he's the guy. And then there's the other guy where it's like, okay, you're going to get found out eventually. And I just feel like Mark Madsen's that guy. And I'll tell you what, if we'd been watching his last 3 fights and he is just running through people, I mean, just sprinting across, grabbing them, suplexing them down, establishing top control, and dominating them for 15 minutes, I'd be like, okay, you know what? You can't strike, but fuck me, that Olympian pedigree is showing through. You've got the most important elements of this sport down as a specialist, and the rest, it's less important. You can have a career. But I mean, his last fight against Vince Pichel, that was a back and forth fight for a lot longer than it should have been.
Yeah, Vince is no spring chicken, but in the UFC since forever. The fight before that was an uncomfortably close one with Clay Guida, who again
Yeah,
just
and
he passed his prime. We haven't seen anything really impressive out of him since his UFC debut. That was more than 3 years ago, and fuck, it's like he kind of flirted with maybe being that elite, dangerous wrestling talent. But like you say, just haven't seen it. The guys that he's been fighting should not have had any business being in the ring with him if he was able to successfully take down and hold down fighters of this caliber.
yeah. So my pick's Grant Dawson. I feel good about that pick.
Same. And even if Grant Dawson shows up drunk and high on weigh-in day, a la John Jones, I'm sticking with it, assuming they let him fight.
Nice. That takes us to the prelims, which as always we'll go through in a little bit faster pace.
Actually,
Derek,
just one quick thing. I've got Gelton Almeida, Maxim Grishin, opening up a 6-fight main card on here. Have I got that wrong?
I thought that fight got cancelled.
Don't tell me that. I wanted to see 2 light heavyweights fighting at heavyweight. Just intrigued me. Damn.
I'm
Yep.
pretty sure. I've got it listed as cancelled.
Yeah, Almeida's been bumped back to UFC 283, fighting at heavyweight again. Well, to be honest, I have no problem with him fighting at heavyweight. He's looked an absolute monster at heavyweight, but fighting Abdurakimov. So that's a much better fight than the Grisham fight. I can live with that.
Yeah, and 283 is looking stacked, so another name for you there. And he gets to fight in Brazil.
Always fun.
Derek Minner, Shah Yalan. This is a hard one to call. I'm going to go Shah. Shah Yalan.
Same. I didn't have as many reservations about this one. I feel pretty comfortable picking. I'm gonna go for it. Nadam Bieke. Shailan
Very
Nadam
nice.
Bieke. Didn't get either of those words right. I won't apologise either.
Miranda Maverick versus Shana Young. I like Miranda. I think she got screwed in at least one of her fights. The only person I think's really dominated her is Erin Blanchfield, and a performance when she came back from that showed that she's learning. I think she beats Shana all day long.
Yep. Yeah, I don't know anyone that's really picking Shana Young in this. I haven't seen the betting line, but I've got to figure Maverick's probably a pretty heavy favourite there. Definitely going Maverick.
Mario Bautista taking on Benito Lopez. I'm picking Bautista, man. I just think he's exciting.
Yeah, again, another one that I don't think's that close. Bautista all day.
Poliana Viana versus Jin Yu Frey. This one's actually a little harder to call. The easy pick would be Viana, but she can look a little ineffective if she can't get fights to the ground, and Jin Yu Frey is certainly strong and athletic. I still feel like Viana is the more dangerous opponent. I would pick Viana.
Nice. Finally, I'm going Jin Yu Frey on this one.
To be honest, it's probably a more sensible pick. But no, I'm sticking with Viana. She's dangerous and she's kind of hot.
That's the best
Although
way to
she
pick
slept
fights.
And she slept with Colby Covington, so she has terrible taste in men. So, there's hope.
I like the optimism.
Ludovic Sholin. Ludwig
Shalinian.
Sholinian. Sorry, I'm a bit drunk and stoned. Taking on Johnny Munoz. I am not going to pick Ludwig because I don't want to have to say that last name again. I'm going Johnny.
Yeah, I'm going Johnny as well. Although I think Shalinian basically getting murked by Jack Shaw last time out. I don't think he looked that bad in the Ultimate Fighter. I don't really see him panning out as a long-term UFC prospect. Could be a good fight though. Let's go, John.
Right. Carlos Candelario taking on Jake Hadley, who lost his debut, but I still think has potential. I'm going Hadley.
Let's think about this. Yeah, I'm gonna go Hadley as well.
Damn, we're literally one fight separated at the moment. Let's see if that can change.
Well, we've got two, unless Manus has a bad cut.
True, I forgot about Manus. You're right. And that takes us to the opening fight of the card: Tamiras Vidal taking on Ramona Pascal, which kind of rhymes. So hey, that's fun. I think Vidal is making her debut, and I'm picking Vidal.
Yeah, same as he's. I thought you were gonna employ your if I haven't seen him, I don't pick him rule.
But I have seen Ramona, and I wasn't impressed.
Yeah, I think that's fair enough. Yeah, I'll go on Vidal as well.
Yeah.
Nothing to base that on. Just going Vidal on this one.
Maverick versus Shana Young should be on the main card instead of the heavyweights.
Any fight on the prelims should be on the main card instead of the heavyweights. I think, probably Miranda Maverick deserves that as much as anyone.
Yeah, exciting.
Even just before. 4-fight main card. Chase and Jay know what they've done. They know their place.
Also, this is something I don't understand either. Right now, they've got 7 fights on the prelims, 5 fights on the main card. But it's a fight night. So what difference? Why not just split it half and half? It's not like you're having to pay for a pay-per-view.
Yeah. I'm sure they've got some weird reason for it, but I'm not going to dwell on it. That's probably like the least interesting thing for me about this card is how they're arranging it. It's not a bad card. It's not a great card.
You can say that again.
It's not a bad card. I was actually going to say it again. I was going to do it all.
It's a classic. Oh, I mean, it's a good joke, mate. That's an airplane joke for you right there.
It's a dad joke. Yeah.
No, it's not quite an airplane joke. What's the airplane joke? It's an entirely different kind of flying altogether now. It's an entirely different kind of flying.
Yeah, don't call me Shirley.
Never call me Shirley. A little bit of news that we can touch on, as I'm trying to filter through to make sure that nothing is related to anything that happened over the weekend. But Askar Askarov has been released.
Well, I think kind of semi-retired.
Yes, basically. He's got health issues. So he's been granted release after request. And
Basically, the guy's
yeah,
been fighting
he's doing
death
it
his
to
whole
dress health.
career. And I don't know what the actual, if it's connected to his ears in any way, shape, or form. But I always thought it was so impressive when you get fighters that are able to compete deaf in any sport. But certainly one where having corners is so important, being able to hear buzzers is so important. Just such a fucking impressive thing with people like Askar Askarov, Matt Hamill back in the day. You think of any more deaf fighters?
Not off the top of my head, but as I was trying to explain to Tom, it's because Matt Hamill's deaf that he beats John Jones. It's the only time I can think where being deaf actually proved to be an advantage in a fight.
I thought it was having such a hittable sort of top of the dome. Just such an elbowable haircut.
The reason the fight got called off as a disqualification is that after the one elbow that might have been 6-12 got landed by John Jones when he fought Matt Hamill, the ref pulled him off and then immediately, without making any eye contact or letting Matt Hamill see his lips, repeatedly asked him, "Are you okay? Tell me you're okay." And when Matt Hamill didn't respond, because he's deaf, the referee called the fight off.
I have to go back and rewatch that one. That's interesting.
Yeah. Had he actually addressed him visually rather than audibly, the likelihood is that Matt Hamill would have said he could have continued. The fight would have gone on. Johns would have been deducted a point, 2 points, whatever. It doesn't matter. He was winning the fight.
Yep.
So there you go. Deafness won a fight.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Now, I'll tell you what's also interesting, though. Do you want to hear a list? And I've made sure that none of these are related to fighters that fought on the weekend. But there have been 11 released fighters this week.
I did see some of these, like Louis Kosai's gone.
That one surprised me, but 0-2.
Well, he was so bad in his last fight as well. It was such an awful fight. Was that Orion? No, it was Louis.
So here's a few that we called. We called Charlie Ontiveros, 0-3. We called him getting cut. We called Christoph Jotko getting cut. We called Misha Serkinov getting cut. The ones we didn't call, although not a surprise, Askarov, although it's not really a cut, Kosuke, Nick Maximov, bit harsh, 2-2 in the UFC.
Yeah, I think also some of these it's people like monitoring with bots when fighters are removed from sort of UFC listings. So it's not always necessarily they got cut. However, I haven't seen anything. Well, I haven't looked this week, but I haven't heard anything to the contrary about Nick. So maybe that is just a real savage cut.
Yeah, Jesse Ronson, who this is just impressive. If you got this many opportunities without getting a UFC win, then you've only got yourself to blame. Leaves with a 0-5 UFC record.
Trying to remember what the record is. I think it's like 0-7. It's that Hawaiian chick that was fighting for coached by Jason Perillo. She was like 0-6 or 0-7. But it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get to that point.
Yeah, I think with Jesse Ronson, I'm pretty sure that he had two stints in the UFC.
Yeah.
Like, I think he went 0-3 and then he went 0-2. I'm pretty sure he didn't just get 5 fights and lost all of them and they kept him around. I'd be really surprised. And then Cameron Van Camp, brought in on short notice, knocked out badly in both of his fights. Darian Weeks, I actually thought this guy looked pretty decent, but 0-3. He got 3 chances. And then Jason Witt, 2-4 with a lose with a 2-4 UFC record. And no big surprises there.
No, not really. Although we'll keep an eye on the Maximoff one, see where he lands, see what's going on there.
Mm. And this is a fight that happened on the weekend, but it wasn't a UFC fight. I know that you don't have any grand interest in watching this, but did you at least hear about what happened with Jake Paul and Anderson Silva?
Oh yeah, Paul picked up a decision, dropped him in the eighth round, right?
Yeah, actually, didn't look awful. Not gonna lie,
I mean,
Jake's not awful.
yeah,
Got
Silver's
pretty well.
almost 50, right? But still, that's it's a lot better than beating Ben Askren. And to be honest, with arthritis in his hands and not really knowing how to box, it's a lot more impressive than beating a almost peak Tyron Woodley. You know, only a few years
Yeah.
past his prime Tyron Woodley. So, hey, all he has to do now is fight an actual boxer. I might actually give him some fucking credit.
No, I think it looks like he's just going to continue to fight old, retiring UFC. That seems to be his MO.
Ah, fuck him then.
You know, there's all the talk now is Nate Diaz.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Nate can box.
Tell you what, it's a hell of a way to make money, man. You got to say, kid's not an idiot. He's getting paid a lot of money to fight big names, knowing that he's got a competitive advantage. It's pretty clever, although frustrating.
What did they weigh in for that fight? Was it like
That was a
200?
cruiserweight fight. Yeah,
200
I
or
mean that's the thing
205?
that makes that's what makes the Nate Diaz fight stupid.
Yeah.
He's just the bigger guy.
Interesting.
So
But
anyway,
I suppose it depends how Nate trains as well, because if he's just training boxing, can he sort of gladly put up a bit more muscle? No, that's not going to impact his cardio in the same way, not having to get up and down, not having to mix in the grappling.
I just feel like size matters, and I tell you what was very telling watching the fight with Silver and Jake Paul is Silver was doing a lot of what he would do in the UFC. You know, with the crazy movements and all the different fakes, and you know, trying to be sort of elusive, but that stuff works a lot better in mixed martial arts. Like boxing's a very specific. You know, the idea of the science of boxing is a real thing,
Yeah.
and it was just too many times he'd be doing these things, and it's just leaving too obvious a hole. And when you haven't got the extra weapons to consider, you know, and when the range is a little bit different, you could just see there's a reason why boxers are boxers, and mixed martial artists are mixed martial artists. It's the same. You know, you're never going to be as good at one thing because you're not able to be a specialist. You spend your whole career becoming very good in a variety of different areas and maybe extremely good in one or two of those areas. But it's just not the same as somebody who spends all of their time just focusing on their hands.
Also, your opponents aren't focusing on the exact same thing. So, when you get good at one or two things in MMA, the chances are that your opponent is not going to be elite at defending those. It's a completely different approach to combat sports.
Yeah, I completely agreed. Which is why I think the arguments are stupid. But, c'est la vie. Just moving on to a bit of NFL chat at the end of it. Eagles, still undefeated. Flying high. 7-0. Big
Yeah.
test coming up. Thursday night football.
And I'm actually going to stay up and watch that one. So that'll be nice.
Well, hey, I think I might stay up and watch that one as well.
Yeah, big test, but honestly, we obviously we have a great shot at winning this game. We're looking like a team that has a great shot at winning every game we go into, and I'm getting really fucking excited. It's easy for people to go like, oh yeah, but the teams you're beating aren't that good. Yup, that's the whole schedule, baby. That's all we're looking at this year. I'll take that.
Also, just to clarify, it's not a big test in terms of the team they're playing. It's a big test just in terms of prime time delivering under the spotlight. I have no question that you will beat the Texans.
We'll see. I mean, we're away, aren't we, for this one?
You are. You are.
And again, like we've been looking dominant, having some great games, but we're not looking perfect in all phases. We do not look fucking good on special teams, which is way more important than people give credit for. Oh, it's going to be good to see. I'm glad we didn't do anything too crazy at the trade deadline. Apparently, they asked around about Kareem Hunt, and Cleveland wanted a fourth, but fuck that. And frankly, with the O line as good as it is, I don't know how much more depth we need or how much of a bigger back we need. We'll kind of get by. What did the
Yeah, the
Dolphins do at the
Dolphins.
trade deadline?
We went and traded a first round pick to get Bradley Chubb from the Broncos, and we also gave them Chase Edmonds, who's been useless for us. So we got a fifth for him, and then we took that fifth and we gave it to the 49ers, and we got their number two running back, Jeff Wilson.
Not bad. How do you
Which,
like your rate your playoff hopes at the moment? You guys, I know it's close in the AFC East, but you're only like a game or two behind, right?
yeah, and here's the thing: we're in the same division as the Bills, and we're probably not going to win the division. It's just about getting one of those wildcard spots. My guess would be 11 wins guarantees it. Just looking at the way that everything's shaping up, the fact that aside from the Bills and the Chiefs, I don't think any of the other AFC teams really look like they're, top level. Everybody looks like they can drop games. In terms of our playoff hopes, it's listen, when we have Tua start and complete a game, we're 5-0. We only lose when he's not on the field. There are injuries. That makes me worried. We've been struggling to get any pressure on the quarterback with our defense. Bradley Chubb should definitely help that. And I'm not too upset because we didn't have our own first round pick this year. We had the 49ers. And with the 49ers getting Christian McCaffrey, it does kind of look like they might make the playoffs. And then all of a sudden, you're not getting a great first round pick anyway. And you've got a young team. Our GM does a pretty good job of drafting in the middle rounds, arguably a better job than he does in the first round. So it's not like we can't use the picks that we have got in that section and still get some quality players in. And we've already got our superstars. I mean, we've got a guy that can pressure the quarterback. We've got a running back that knows this, running scheme that we're going to be using under Mike McDaniels. It's all on Tua. If he stays healthy, he looks like he's one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the league. I mean, you look at forget the time he's been injured, his stats are right up there. He's got the highest passer rating, the highest QBR, the highest number of attempts per game. If you look at his average yards per game, if it wasn't for the 2.5 games he missed, he'd be right there at the top of the league. So it's kind of crazy, man, because, you look at that 2020 draft class for quarterbacks, where you had Burrow, Tua, Herbert, and Jalen Hurts as the 4 main guys drafted in the top 2 rounds. Right now, it looks like all 4 of those guys are working out to not just be decent, but be top quarterbacks. And then you flip it to the next year's quarterbacks: Lawrence, Zach Wilson, Trey Lance, Justin Fields, and Mac Jones. And only like one of those guys is working out right now.
Yeah, but very, very early days to call it on a quarterback, and frankly, Fields in Chicago is doing some
True.
things. Mac Jones has had his
He's the guy.
moments, and also some shit moments. But look, it's kind of like you kind of grade it towards the end of year 3 a little bit more for a quarterback, I think. Jalen Hurts, you know, like last year, started going into the season, we were talking about how he only has 1 year to kind of prove it. Didn't really do that, but it's just come in this year and has just really stepped up in a huge way. Getting it done with his arm and his feet now. So I think we're all quite happy in the Philly fan base that this is the guy moving forward. And I love that we're going to have the Saints pick in the first round, because even though Howie doesn't historically pick well in the first round either, he does a fantastic job of trading back. So I fully expect we're going to convert that one into a lot more picks. Just keep trading back, keep building up that draft collateral. We're looking pretty fucking good.
The rest of the season must be so non-stressful for you now, just in the sense that it's. I look at the standings. There's not even a question of you're already in the playoffs practically.
You say that, but our division's looking ridiculous now. It's the NFC beast. No one saw that coming this year. This is the most amount of wins within one division across 8 weeks that there's ever
That's
been.
nuts.
So since the merger, I believe. Yeah, it is nuts. There's a chance that pretty much all of us are going to be making the playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah, but correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that every other team in second place or lower in the other three divisions in the NFC has losing records. And in fact,
Yeah, the NFC's a
the
joke.
NFC's and the NFC South, one of the teams that's leading it is leading it with a 4-4 record. So that's the crazy thing, is that you might have a team hosting a wildcard game in the NFC with a losing record, playing a team that might have more than 11 wins and be away from home.
Yep, totally possible.
Whereas, to answer your question on the playoff hopes, we've got some big games coming up. We're playing the Bears, the Browns, the Texans, the 49ers, and the Chargers before we then go away to the Bills, which we will definitely lose. So really, if we can win, I'd say 4 of those 5 games, get ourselves to 9-4, eventually 9-5 after losing to the Bills, then you only need to beat the Packers and the Jets at home, and you got your 11 wins. And then there's away at the Patriots, which you might win in between. So that's my goal, 11 wins. That means that in the last 9 games, we can go 6-3. And Tua stays healthy, our receivers stay healthy, anything's possible.
Yeah, for sure. Shaping up to be a fun year this year in the NFL.
Mate, it's a bit fucking stressful having Arsenal in the Europa League, though, because I have to watch Arsenal and the Dolphins on Sundays. And, I mean, thank God Arsenal just put Nottingham Forest to the sword and made that a pretty easy game to watch. But it's kind of nuts, man. Arsenal, I could be looking at a good season for both sports teams, which I don't think's ever happened.
Hey, you and me both. And for Bournemouth, it's even if we get relegated, it's just got bought by a billionaire. So
You're looking long
smiles times ahead.
On that note, I think that's a pretty happy note to end the podcast on. Guys, again, we're sorry that we're late with this one and that there isn't a breakdown show. We will make up for it next week. It's just said earlier, it's been a bit of a wild one, but please do like the video if you still enjoyed. Subscribe if you're not subscribed. We will be back on schedule next week as well, so you can enjoy our podcast coming out on Monday evening, and then the pick show, which I believe will be for UFC 281, coming out middle of the week. Guys, have a good week until then. Take it easy, and bye Dave, bye Laura Petrufo.
Bye Laurie. Bye Dave.